So anyway, so you went to law school with Ted.
I did. He was a year behind me.
Okay.
I've so I was the Student Bar Association president at the law school,
Okay.
and one day the dean called me into his office, and he says the police suspect that we have one of our law students as a serial killer, and they're going to have one of his victims who escaped come to class, come to the law school tomorrow morning, and stand outside the classroom when he leaves class, and see if she can identify him. And I'd like you, this is the dean talking, I'd like you as the Student Bar Association president just to be there and observe this. I was kind of shocked, as you might expect.
Sure.
And then when he told me who it was, I was flabbergasted, because although I didn't know him very well, I saw him virtually every day. He was a likable guy.
Yeah.
And just kind of seemed like the all-American kid. Any event, and of course the dean swore me to secrecy, and so the next morning I was there with a couple of plainclothes policemen, the dean and myself, standing outside, ironically, of Professor Lionel Frankel's criminal law class.
Okay.
That Ted was taking. Everyone walks out of the class, and no Ted Bundy. He was absent that day.
Oh.
So they said, "Well, okay, maybe we'll come back over next week." 'Cause they didn't. I guess they didn't have enough to arrest him for a lineup, but wanted to see if he could be identified by a victim. So, of course, the dean swore me to secrecy and whatever. So that night, or it was either that night or the next day, we had a Student Bar Association party out at the Salt Lake or Cottonwood softball complex, where we had a barbecue and I think we had a band and played softball or whatever for the students. I think it was I can't remember if it was a graduation party or just a spring party or whatever. But in any event, so I show up there, and there's Ted Bundy.
Okay.
And so, of course, I can't say anything and whatever. And my the secretary of the Student Bar Association was a woman by the name of Brooke Wells. She is now a federal magistrate judge here in Utah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we're there, and of course, as Student Bar Association president and Brooke as secretary, we were in charge of the party. And so I had told Brooke that if she would get down there and help set everything up, she could then leave when the party was over, because there's always an after party somewhere, and she could then go to the after party, and I would stay cleaning everything up and etc. So we get there, and here's Ted Bundy, and he's mingling with everybody, and blah 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 blah, and and so the party winds down, and people were saying, they were going to the Green Parrot, I think, this little bar. It's no longer around, but I think it was in Trolley Square. But in any event, and Ted says to Brooke, the now magistrate federal judge, "Oh, Brooke, I'll give you a ride to the party."
Okay.
And so I kind of went like, oh my hell, I can't.
Because you know who he is now, yeah.
I know who he is, or at least who, yeah. So I say, well, Brooke, you've got to stay and help me clean up. You said if I helped set up, you would take care of cleaning up. I know, but I really need your help, blah, blah. Anyway, so I persuaded her to stay.
Oh, my God.
And then about 3 days later, he was arrested.
Okay.
Ted was arrested. So Brooke Wells, at her swearing-in ceremony as a judge, told this story about how Randy Dreyer saved her life. So that's my Ted Bundy story. And then, but I will tell you that students couldn't believe it. In fact, there was a Ted Bundy Legal Defense Fund that was started, and there were T-shirts that were made and sold to help raise money because no one could believe that Ted Bundy could be a serial killer.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as with a lot of sociopaths, he was very charismatic and obviously led two lives, and to everyone's horror, as more and more evidence came out, people realized that it was this kind of monster
I saw
that we went with that we saw every day during class.
Sure.
There was the students couldn't believe it, so there was collecting money to help a legal defense fund.
Okay, yeah, right.